leaves and goes to the bathroom. It's like a restaurant. You leave and go to the bathroom and food gets there.
Kind of like when the
Or
phone
if you
rings
go to
and the
the
minute you
bathroom,
put
that
something in
phone
your
call
mouth.
you're waiting for.
Yep.
Always. Don't go away. I'm not going to start.
One might work towards the battery.
Is he gonna do it?
So creepy. I didn't have a whole lot of
I just hear a waterfall.
Yeah. I had 49% left.
My mom often got her important phone calls while she was in the shower, so.
Well, I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to read.
Abstract shadow.
I think we're all asking the same question.
Well, as it happens, when I was checking I back up stuff on Dropbox, and when I was checking my Dropbox, why, lo and behold, make sure it's actually finished. I could be in bad trouble. Oh, crap. I think it's not done. Well, maybe I won't be doing it.
Do you need an internet connection?
Nah,
My cell phone as well.
I just didn't back that one up where I thought it was. Oh, that's my nightly bird update. I'll read this. Bird update. Birds are doing well. Minnie Macaw even stepped up and sat on my shoulder as I took care of stuff. Total surprise. Was just giving, come back here. Was just giving treats. And he went for it. Thanks, Mike. I'm trying to do a reading right now. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's our house sitter.
Do we need like one of those movie theater cell phone announcements?
If she's allowed to get calls, I think. Well, I was gonna, badly said, she's in charge, she's allowed to get calls.
Just look for everyone else, just in case.
Well, all right. I can't do that. Let me see if. Which one is it? Apparently didn't. So we'll go and try something else. Sure, this one's finished. Apparently, I only saved half of the one. All right. This is, I know most of you are probably not, are any of you following Secret World Chronicle?
I only learned about it today.
Same here.
Nobody.
Hot and steamy Daniel and Steph action.
No,
Can you
sorry.
repeat that? Because I don't, just heard her name yesterday, so I'm like, this is the first experience.
Oh,
Oh dear.
Somebody give him a
I
video.
know, the Secret Project, which is no longer secret. Guess who's going to be the latest Disney young adult writer?
Ooh.
Larry. We just sold this to Hyperion, which is Disney's young adult arm. So. All right. This has been a secret project that I've been working on for about a year and a half, 2 years, off and on. And it's a young adult, sort of a post-apocalypse with magic. And it's called Hunter, and it is the first of 3 books at least. We'll see how far it goes after that.
I'm not sure I've heard of a young adult with that genre before.
I know.
Well, that's apparently why they bought it. Okay, so, here we go. You couldn't see outside the train windows at night. The conductor opaqued them. Most people probably wouldn't want to see out anyway. I looked around at the rest of the passengers in this car. I noticed when I got to my seat that I was the only one in here that was under 30 years old. Now, I was the only one still awake. Pretty much everyone else had their seats in the reclined position, their cocoons on, and their privacy hoods over their heads and shoulders. Well, okay, maybe some of them were watching vids in there, but you couldn't tell. They'd have their buds in and their glasses on. There was just row after row of reclined seats, skewed so that no one quite had his head in someone else's lap, each person bundled up tightly like a swaddled baby, with soft black hammocks over the top halves. I watched, and a lot of them had asked for nightcaps. If something bad happened now, they'd all die without ever knowing they'd been in danger. All but me. My seat was reclined, of course. I didn't have any choice in that. All the seats had reclined and swiveled for the night at the same time. The conductor did that for the whole car. But I hadn't fastened down the cocoon, and I wasn't going to use a hood. I certainly wasn't going to have a nightcap. My masters would have had a litter of cats if I even looked at a nightcap. Well, no, they actually wouldn't. My masters didn't do that sort of thing. But they'd give me that look that said, "You know better than that," which was actually a whole lot worse than having a litter of cats. I wanted to look out, even though I knew the view would be no different from daytime. The track was safe enough, well, as safe as things ever got out here below the snow line. It was enclosed in a wire cage that was kept electrified for 5 miles in front of and behind the speeding train. Outside the cage, though, that was different. Some places were safe and protected, some not. Some were hell on earth. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it all, no matter how awful it was out there. No matter how scared I was, and believe me, I was scared. I wouldn't show it. I'd spent a lot of time learning how not to show it, but I was scared. Not that I was from a place that was precisely safe, but it was safer than some of the territory we were speeding through. Some? Most, more likely. And there was a good chance I was going to go out there into the worst parts of it. If not now, then soon. It would surely be no more than a year before I was patrolling it. You see, I'm a hunter. One of the stewards was making his way through the rows, checking on everyone. I'm not sure why he needed to, but this is a very expensive and very exclusive way to travel. So I suppose the illusion of always being served comes with it. No one flies but the military, of course. The skies are just too dangerous. There are other trains, not like this one, where people are packed in like cattle. They have to hump their own baggage and bring their own meals. I saw them at the station, and it looked like the old pictures of people fleeing from a war. Away from my masters, though, I was told I would always get the star treatment, partly because of what I am, partly because of Uncle. The steward paused at my row, and I tensed a little, expecting a rebuke or a demand to lie down and sleep like everyone else. But instead, he leaned over the man between me and the aisle and whispered, "Are you really the hunter?" I nodded. His eyes went wide. "You're so young," he blurted. "You're just a girl." I thought about telling him I'd been a hunter since I was 9, then I thought better of it. The masters weren't even supposed to exist, and when someone turned hunter, they were supposed to go to Apex City immediately anyway. I just shrugged. "Can I see the hounds?" he breathed. That took me by surprise. "Here?" I asked. "Now?" It would be tricky to summon them on a moving train, but since I wasn't under attack, not difficult as such. But the hounds are not exactly quiet about making their entrance, and I wasn't sure if even earbuds and cocoons would insulate these other important personages, nor how they would feel about being awakened by a full pack. He glanced at the rest of the passengers. "The wrecked car is empty." I nodded, shucked myself out of my cocoon, and edged into the aisle. I followed him through 2 more cars full of silent cocoons and into the wrecked car. We picked up 2 more stewards on the way. He was right, it was empty. The auto bar blinked its lights at us, then went back to wait mode when we didn't go get ourselves drinks. The game consoles were silent, as were the gambling tables. There was some clear space at the back with fold-down exercise machines. That is where I went. By now, I had quite an audience, and more were coming. Word about what I was going to do must have spread through the rest of the train. It made me a little nervous because I didn't usually do this with an audience. I closed my eyes and envisioned the mandala, opened my mind to the other world. With my eyes still closed, I drew the summons glyphs in the air with sweeping gestures. If I opened them, I knew I would see the glyphs hanging in midair, drawn in flames, which was something of my signature. Very showy, which is odd, considering I tend to keep myself to myself, and I hate fuss. I heard the group's swift intake of collective breath. With an abrupt gesture, I cast the glyphs to the ground and opened the way. Now I opened my eyes. Now I opened my eyes, in time to see my hounds bursting out of midair between me and the onlookers. Someone gave out a nervous shriek, and all 7 of the hounds turned their heads in his direction to stare with their flaming eyes. Little flickers of flame danced over their coal-black coats. They'd chosen to look like black greyhounds, which was a good choice. There wasn't much room for anything bigger. They were intimidating without inciting panic, and there was no way their usual forms would have fit. They look just like dogs, one of the stewards said doubtfully. Vaya looked over his shoulder at me and dog grinned. Then before I could stop him, whipped his head back around and blew a jet of flame at the devil. There were shrieks, but I stepped in between them right into the flame and let it play over me. Illusion, I explained as the panic subsided. That wasn't the truth, of course. Vaya had merely ordered the flames not to burn anything or anyone. But knowing that my hounds could turn the laws of physics inside out would only make their poor little brains explode. I know it made my brain explode the first few times I saw them do impossible things. After that, the hounds went into superstar mode and graciously accepted the admiration of the crowd. Everyone wanted to touch them, pet them, and the hounds were in the mood to accept that. Probably since we hadn't hunted in 2 weeks, and they were bored and hadn't gotten their quota of adoration for a while. When they're in a petable form, they go all out. Their coats are as sleek and soft as the antique silks I've handled at the monastery. In a situation like this one, I don't have to dismiss them. They go off on their own. When they got tired of it all, they went to the glyphs still burning on the floor and leapt through to the other side. Vaya was last. Vaya seems to like people more than the rest of them. When he went through, the glyphs vanished and the crowd dispersed back to their duties, all but the steward of the car I was in. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked, pausing at the auto bar. I thought for a moment. It was just a little intimidating and a little intoxicating. Here I was in a situation I had literally never found myself before. A situation where I could have absolutely anything I wanted. Almost anything, that is. That put things into perspective. I really wanted to turn the train around and go back home. For a moment, homesickness swallowed me up. But I kept my hunt face on, just as I'd been taught. "You choose. Something soothing, sweet, and hot, with nothing like a drug or alcohol in it," I said, thinking I was going to get some sweet hot tea, which I much prefer to the hot buttered tea some of my masters like. Well, it isn't really tea. Nobody on this continent can get that anymore. It's herbal teasing. But it's real butter. Cows can't live up in the mountains, but goats can. "I know just the thing," he said, and went to the auto bar. He brought back something medium brown, opaque, with an intriguing smell. I sipped it. It was odd, but good, creamy and sweet. "Hot choco-like," he said, and gestured for me to follow him. I did, sipping as we went. At the vestibule to my car, he paused. If something were to happen to the train, you and your hounds would protect us, right? We'd be all right with you here until help came, right?" I thought about that. Thought about the likelihood that if there was an incident that involved something big and nasty enough to break through the electrified cage, the train would probably crash. And at the speed it was going, not even the crash bubbles would save us. And that if any of us did survive, we'd be too injured to do anything or unconscious. Thought of possibilities that didn't involve crashing, in which case the armed cars at the front and the rear of the train would do a lot more about protecting us than me or the hounds ever could. I mean, there were machine guns with armor-piercing blessed bullets in there, and mortars, and some trains were even rumored to carry small missile launchers with hellfires loaded. I'm cursed with a very good imagination. And right then, what I could imagine was terrifying. But my masters had told me that when I got out here in the world, people out here would look at me differently than they did. That hunters were some sort of legendary beings out there. We didn't get a lot of vid on the mountain. We were off the grid, and most of our electricity had to be saved for things that mattered. So mostly it was just the officially mandated stuff we warmed up the vid screen in the community hall for. But sometimes, when there was a bit of electricity to spare, we watched other things. And the few shows I had seen seemed to bear what the masters said about hunters out. And if we did get into trouble and survived it, and the armed cars didn't stop what was trying to get at us, then it would be one of two things. Either so big, powerful, or both, that nothing would save the train, or something powerful, but not so big, crafty, slippery, and vicious. And that was exactly what I and my hounds were trained to handle. All that went through my mind in a flash. I've been trained to analyze and assess in less time than it takes citizens to blink. "Yes," I said simply, "so long as you forget how young I look and do exactly what I tell you." Enough of the hunter mystique must have attached itself to me when I summoned the hounds, that he just got this hugely relieved look on his face and sighed. Then he opened the door for me and waved me through. I went back to my seat and perched on it, Zen style, sipping the drink. It must be terrible territory we're passing through for him to have asked that question. Now I really wanted to see what was out there, even though I had shiver bumps all up and down my spine. It's what's unknown and unseen that scares me most. There was a lot of speculation among the folks that depended on the monastery on just what had happened to cause the disarray. That's what everyone calls it. The time when the old world created vids and trains and planes and all of that got turned upside down. I know there were volcanoes and earthquakes because the island of California used to be part of the continent. And there's Old Yeller, a volcano where a park used to be, that still sends up ash plumes that ground the air core, and Olympus, another one in the northwest that took out a whole city. There were plagues too, and storms like no one had ever seen before, the kind of storms that still make flying too dangerous for anyone but the Air Corps to dare. And the South Pole is where the North Pole used to be. And of course there was the breakthrough, which really made flying too dangerous. The Christers all thought it was their apocalypse, and the masters say they were all confidently expecting to be carried up to heaven, while everyone that wasn't them died horribly or suffered for hundreds of years. Only that didn't happen, even when some of them decided that the apocalypse must need a kickstart like a balky engine, and set off some sort of really bad bomb in what used to be Israel. They still didn't get carried up to heaven. Not one. They just died like everyone else. So that's why it's called the disarray instead of the apocalypse. The masters say it didn't all happen at once. The things just got worse and worse until the bombs went off. And that, they think, is what caused the breakthrough. All they could tell us for certain sure is that in the middle of disaster after disaster, the other-siders came through, and with them came magic. It was like the old story in one of the books I read when I first got to the monastery, where this girl named Pandora opened a box, and everything horrible burst out of it and spread over the world. Most of the other-siders are monsters. Dragons, kraken, leviathans, gods and magogs, furies, harpies, things we don't even have names for. Even the masters don't know what happened, not really. Some think that the breakthrough happened because of the bombs. Some think it was because of some other terrible weapon that got set off, or all the poisons that people were dumping into the air of land and water, or because of the polar shift. And some of the masters just shrug and say, we violated the earth until she opened the gates of hell to visit our karma upon us. Well, I'm not a master, and I'm never going to be. I'm too focused on right here, right now. So my ruminations on the disarray didn't last any longer than that cup of yummy goodness. I had another day and a night on the train, and then it would arrive in Apex City, the capital, and I would find out why Uncle had sent for me rather than one of the other hunters. Another day and night to get used to being alone and lonely, to get used to being homesick. The last time I'd seen my uncle in person was when he put me into the care of a yellow-robed monk at the monastery. We must have gotten there by another train, although I don't remember it. I might have been hurt, or unconscious, or maybe sedated. The monks told me I was one of a huge group of kids that was evacuated ahead of an other-sider incident. Incident. That's what they call it when monsters avalanche over your town and wipe out everything that gets in the way. One of the last out, they said. Uncle brought me and a handful of other kids that didn't have any family either. All the rest got adopted quick by families, but I got taken by the masters. I vaguely remember my mother and father from before that, but the incident itself, nothing. The more I think about it, I was probably sedated. My bachelor uncle was probably not well equipped to cope with an hysterical toddler. I do remember him, though. It wasn't as if he abandoned me. I remembered him from that night, and he wrote to me all the time, and I'd seen him in news stories over the years, getting grayer and balder. He's a very important man, prefect of the police, and the hunters that aren't in the Army are under his command. Which is why I'm here in a train full of important people or their relatives. If he were incredibly important, I'd have a private car and private cabin in a car made up of private cabins, and the only person I would see would be my personal steward. And if I were astronomically important, I'd get an entire car to myself. But that sort of treatment is reserved for the sort of people I'll never see except at a distance or in bids. The warm drink in me finally made me sleepy. And it wasn't private enough here for me to curl up and have a good cry about being sent away from everyone I knew. I pulled the cocoon up over and around me and lay down on the soft surface of the seat, but I didn't snug the cocoon tight. The steward might just have been a timid fellow, or he might have had a reason for asking if the hounds and I would protect him. I was a hunter, and a hunter who wants to grow old always expects the worst. So I had my seatbelt on, under the cocoon, and I left my boots on too, and I didn't snug the cocoon down. And when at last I slept lightly. So you want some more of that?
Yes. Yep.
Chapter 2. I was up with the first light. Oh, hold back your surprise. The important people around me continued to sleep, kept in cozy blackness by their privacy hoods. I came awake and alert all at once. Unless a hunter is sick or drugged, that's what we do. The windows had been transparented, so I finally got my look at what was outside the cage. Flat, open fields. Flat, by my standards anyway. I knew where we were immediately. We were onto land that used to hold enormous grain fields and vast herds of cattle. The cattle were still out there, but they were wild now and looked nothing like the fat, box-shaped, walking meat sacks that used to drift around these grain fields. These were rangy as a goat, and as the train sped by, they ran away from it, fleet and agile, then whirled to stare at it suspiciously, as if to make sure it wasn't going to escape its cage. There were things that weren't birds circling overhead. Harpies. I could tell by the shape. Probably waiting for one of the cattle to do something stupid and get itself killed. Harpies didn't hunt. They were scavengers, like vultures, and cowards as that. Nothing to worry about unless a flock of them decided to take you on, or you were toddler-sized. But in the far distance there was smoke, a lot of it, and it had that tinge of black that told me it was coming from burning buildings. I squinted. There was some movement at the base of the smoke, and if I could see movement at this distance, it had to be something big. Draken, maybe, or gods and Magons. So, I'd heard about this before I left. Out there was what was left of Springdale. Springdale was lucky. Everyone had gotten out before the Draken charged in and set everything ablaze. No point in going back, either. The Draken had taken it for their nesting grounds, and you might as well think about going to the moon as think about taking back your town when Draken moved in. No wonder the steward was nervous last night. One Draken couldn't take out a train, but a whole flock could. In between the cattle at the side of the tracks and the burning town, there didn't seem to be anything. I knew better than to trust that. It was just when the landscape seemed empty that it was inclined to sprout things that wanted desperately to kill you. Now, some of this was pure, mindless, humans are the tastiest things there are, sort of wanting to kill you. And we are the best eating there is for other ciders. The younger we are, the tastier we are. If you haven't studied magic, and most people haven't, you wouldn't know why. It's because of the mana, which is raw magical energy. Everything makes it, but humans make more of it than animals. Plus, we're born with a huge, honking reservoir of the stuff. So young humans are extremely tasty indeed. The mana is one reason why the hounds work with me. Together, we can take out very mana-rich targets, and they get to eat it all since I don't need it. Some of the monsters out there don't eat mana, they eat life force, which is a different sort of thing. And again, the younger and healthier you are, the more of it you have. But the most dangerous of the things, and the rarest for humans to see, are the brainy ones, the folk. They kill humans for reasons of their own, and we don't know what those reasons are because they don't speak to us except on very rare occasions. And then, it's usually a challenge, or very cryptic. They live, they own the island of California. Folk killed them. Are they in control of the other creatures? sometimes. Were they the ones that caused the breakthrough, or did they just take advantage of it? No one knows. You probably never heard about the folks before, because the government really does not want people to know about them. That's what my masters say anyway. They warned me to be careful about talking about them out in the rest of the world. They told me before I left that unless and until someone important actually said something about the folk, I was to pretend they didn't exist. Us on the mountain know, all of us, because of the masters who don't believe in holding back information. But almost no one leaves the mountain. Well, no one really wants to. For everyone I know, anyway, there is nothing we see in the cities on the vids that tempts us, no matter how much they try to propagandize us. As I looked out of that window, I got one of those feelings, a goosebump moment combined with a certainty. There was one of the folk out there, maybe more than one. Springdale had fallen because they wanted it to, and I was very glad we were speeding past it. We were going fast enough that they probably wouldn't notice us. Incidents are horrible enough without having the folk involved. But that explained why the citizens of Springdale had managed to escape. The folk let them, holding back the monsters until everyone was out. Why? Heck if I knew. The folk do things all the time that makes no or little sense. I quickly directed my thoughts to concentrate on my totem, one white stone. This is my core, the thing I have learned to think about exclusively when I'm worried that something might pick up my thoughts. This is a trick the masters taught me, and so far as I know, I am the only hunter that does this, although most of the masters do. The hounds know that when my thoughts are full of one white stone, there is danger around me. They would know on the other side that something was up and be ready for a summons. It's just not wise to talk or think about the herd. Some people believe it can summon them right from other side. I don't know about that, but I do know that thinking about them certainly gets their attention. The smoke dropped behind us, and I relaxed a very little bit. Enough that when the steward brought me breakfast, I was able to enjoy it. Some of the masters are vegan. They only eat plant stuff and animal stuff that doesn't involve killing, like butter and eggs. But some aren't, and most of our people up on the mountain are omnivores. So the smoked bacon and eggs weren't new to me, except that I suspected the bacon, at least, was clone pig, not real pig. Vat-grown meat of a couple of cell generations. Down from a sample that had been taken from a living hog. It had a kind of uniform taste and texture I wasn't used to. And I missed the wild taste and leanness of bacon that comes from a pig that's raised outside of a confining pen. But there was some orange-colored juice that was really nice, and more of that choco-like. We have coffee, it grows on mountains, and I like coffee a lot, but I could get used to this other stuff pretty quickly. There was toast made from bread of a sort I wasn't used to. Ours isn't wheat bread, it's half lupin flour and half other stuff. It's dark and dense. This was hardly like bread at all. It was all right, especially with butter, but kind of delicate, like cake that isn't sweet. Our jelly is a lot better than citizen jelly, though, so I skipped that. Citizen jelly is insubstantial, sweet without actually having a flavor. My breakfast was long gone by the time most of the others started waking and queuing up for the fresher. My masters had taught me all about how to use freshers and other texts, so I wouldn't find myself at a disadvantage. But on the whole, I like a real bath or shower better, even if the fresher is faster and does your clothing at the same time. I didn't stare at the others, but that didn't stop them from staring at me. I was wearing the same clothing I wear for hunting at home, because I don't have much else. I know I had to look odd to them. They were all done up in what I guess must have been the latest fashions. A lot of light, shiny fabric in pastels and asymmetric hems. Stuff that wouldn't last half an hour in the woods. Shoes with heels that must have caused a million backaches. I was in sober, dark brown linen, a hooded wrap coat, pants made of the same stuff tucked into real leather boots with sensible flat soles, elk hide if you want to know, and a knit wool tunic in oatmeal color. I heard whispers but politely ignored them. Besides, I had my exercises to go through. You don't become a hunter without knowing magic. The masters told me that most hunters off the mountain don't go much beyond the summoning, though, and they couldn't see the point of that. So I knew a lot of magic, and magic is a slippery thing. It doesn't like to be controlled, so you have to practice all the time or you lose it. The spells and glyphs just slip out of your mind and are gone if you don't keep it up. So every morning, right after breakfast, I ran my exercises. If I were home, I'd actually bring the spells. A spell is a process, not a thing, right up to almost complete. Then let it fall apart. A little like doing kata, the moves of martial arts, without the strength behind them that turns them into attacks. But that's not the sort of thing you can do in a place surrounded by people who don't know you. So I just ran through them all in my head, visualizing them. It takes concentration, and the masters used to bang drums and set the kids to playing around me and do anything they could to break that concentration. Those stares and whispers didn't really bother me at all. The screams, however. I snapped out of my little world and was on my feet with my wand and knife in my hands instantly, drawn out of the sheaths in my boots. No need to look further than the windows for the reasons for the screaming. I was looking right into the glittering gold eyes and arm-long fangs of a draken. The only reason I didn't scream myself was training. Hunters don't scream. Not when we're startled, not when we're terrified, not when we're hurt, not even when we're dying. Though in our case, the dying usually happens too fast to scream. Screaming only brings more trouble, and if you feel the urge to scream, you probably have too much trouble to begin with. The steward opaqued the window a second after I opened my eyes, but I had taken it all in, like a camera. There wasn't just one draken out there, it was an entire flock. They were raving at the cage, trying to cling to it and being flung off by the electrical charge. They couldn't have seen the train from where they were at the ruins of Springdale. We hadn't blown the whistle, which would have attracted them. And in any case, this was nesting season, and they'd taken that town for a nest. So there was only one reason why a flock of draken would be attacking the cage around the train. They'd been led by one or more of the folk. I wasn't even consciously aware that I was up and running until I hit the door to the car. It opened just a hair before I reached it, and I saw that every single door, all the way to the armed car at the front, was open. The same quick-witted steward must have registered what I was doing and slapped the controls to open them all. It might not have been my best sprinting time, but it was right up there. The door to the armed car was closed and locked, of course, but I'm a registered hunter. I was registered from the moment my uncle sent for me, and my palm on that door plate opened it to me. I was confronted by another sealed hatch and a metal ladder welded to the inner hull. The engineer would be below in his sealed pod. I wanted the top deck. I really don't remember going up the ladder. The three gunners reacted predictably to my sudden appearance, whipping around in time to see me presenting both hands, backs to them, with the hunter mandalas tattooed there. Joyeux Charmand, I said, registered hunter, and yes, niece, what's the situation? Part of the situation was obvious. The monitors at every gun station linked to cameras on the exterior of the car were not blanked. The Draken were keeping pace with the train, throwing themselves over and over at the electrified cage. Draken don't fly, but they can leap enormous distances, and their size utterly defies the square cube law. But then, most things from the other side defy the laws of physics. If you've never seen a Draken, well, see if you can find the Tennille illustrations of the Jabberwocky from Alice in Wonderland. Like that. only about 150 feet long. Like some deep water horror of a head married to a snaky body with a long row of spikes down the back and a whip-like tail perched on thin, birdie legs with wicked long talons at the end of them. They're usually various shades of brown and green. I wasn't, at the moment, concerned with them. They were the distraction. It isn't practical to keep the cage electrified for more than a couple of miles in front of and behind the train. Most beasties don't bother to try and break through the cage. Why should they? They can see for themselves there's nothing in there. And they aren't bright enough to realize that if they could get inside of the cage well ahead of the train, they'd have it. Ah. But when the folk get involved, and I knew it. I knew it when I saw this, that one or more of the folk was involved. Draken just don't act like this on their own. One white stone. One white stone. One white stone. Psi shields, I snapped at the soldiers. They're mechanical. They're only on the armed car, and they aren't nearly as effective as something a real Simon can put up. But they're better than nothing, and I didn't need these lads pulling their sidearms on me in here because the folk took them over. The armored car has plating of cold iron, so magic wouldn't work right in here, and the masters hadn't taught me how to dodge bullets yet. But there's, began the one with the most stripes. Don't argue with her, you moron. Do it, snapped one of the other two. Then, without waiting for orders, reached out a long arm and snapped a series of switches over the ranker's head. Full zoom ahead, I said, and the same fellow scrolled a wheel that zoomed out the front, that zoomed out the view on the front monitor more than a mile. 2, 5, out to where the electrification of the cage ended. Out to where part of the cage was missing. And someone was standing there, sparkling like a rich citizen's tiara in the sunlight, with another shimmer all around him and a dragon waiting like a dog beside him. The ranker knew what to do about that. He slapped a signal that told the engineer below to hit the emergency brake, because if we hit that shimmer at speed, we'd flatten like a tortilla on it. Then he hit something else at the same time as I was grabbing a stanchion to keep from going arse over tea kettle. And 6 Hellfire missiles streaked away from the front of the train. They hit all at once in a burst of flame over the track that made the front-facing monitor white out for a second. But when the monitor cleared again, he was still there, standing casually behind his wall, although the Draken had fled. Trains take a long time to stop. 2 miles for us, plus the amount we traveled when we spotted it. The cheeky bastard could see we were stopping and lifted up and began levitating towards us, floating along with his arms crossed casually over his chest. Oh, this was so not good. 1 white stone. 1 white stone. He couldn't get the Draken to come in the cage with him, though, so we had that much going for us. We'd only have to face him and whatever else he could summon. We came to a full stop. He was still a mile away. I made a lightning decision. I'm going out, I announced. Can you creep the train behind me at a walk? Are you? The ranker began, then shut his pie hole. Yes, honey, we can do that. I need to get out to summon, and I don't want to do that when I'm trading eyeball glare with him, I explained. Wordlessly, the smart one handed me a headset. It was, well, ridiculously tiny compared to the ones we have on the mountain. But I knew what it was. I stuck the ear carrot in the right place and adjusted the thread-like mic boom. "If you see a chance for firepower, give us a sign," he said. I thought about it. The hounds could and would protect me from nastiness like blowback and shrapnel. "The sign will be Zapotec," I said. He gave me a weird look, but nodded. I wasn't surprised. Most citizens have never heard of the Zapotec, but one of their old men is one of my masters, the very first one who helped me learn my magic. With a whoosh of hydraulics, a hatch above me opened and a ladder dropped down. I climbed it to find myself at the top of the engine, which was hissing and popping and making heat sounds. It took a moment to find the ladder that took me to the ground, but as soon as my feet were on the earth, I used the field summons. I held my hands over my eyes, shouted the words, and felt the summoning glyphs on the backs of my hands light up. I mean that literally. It felt as if they were etched in red-hot wire. There's always a price for everything a hunter does. The price for fast is pain. I felt the portal open up in front of me and heard the scream of defiance as my hounds, who already knew how bad things were, rushed up and out and to my side. And now they had their true forms. The smallest, Baya, was the size of a horse. The largest was the size of the shed you'd keep the horse in. They looked like something out of a peyote dream. They were alebrijes, things people had once thought were only the hallucinations of an artist in a high fever. Oh no, they were real that when Pedro Linares caught a fever and saw into the other side, they were what he saw. Okay, you have no idea what I'm talking about, unless you happen to have seen my hounds. So, take just about any animal. Now add spines, wings, horns, whatever you like. Now paint it in eye-watering psychedelic colors and crazy patterns. Now make it horse-sized or bigger. Give it a lot of mana and the ability to use it, and add the real offensive weapons, the stingers, the claws, and poison fangs, and fire breath. That's an alebrije. And they like us. They like humans. And near as I can tell, they hate the folk. Which is a damn good thing, or Pedro would never have come out of his fever dream. Heck, they might even have been the ones that cured him. I'm the only hunter I know with alebrijes as hounds, which was another damn good thing, because there was a chance that the folk mage ahead of us might not recognize them or know how to fight them. Baya, as usual, glued himself to my side as we walked out to meet the mage, the huge engine barely crawling along behind us. The rest ranged to either side of me, carefully not touching the cage. Outside, I looked calm, cool, and indifferent. Inside, I was a screaming mess. I'd never faced a mage alone before, and when I had seen one, and only one, it had been one my master had faced down before, and my master was with me at the time. Scared? I was glad I was dry and empty, let's just say that. My mouth was dry, my stomach a cold, hard knot, and my heart going like a fancy dance drum. But my hands were steady, my vision clear, and so was my mind. So, it was party time. One white stone. One white stone. One white stone. Chapter 3. Are you liking this?
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes.
How are you spelling Draken?
Drakken.
Okay, I thought it was something like that.
I'll get through the confrontation with the folk mage and then we'll call it. Soon enough, I was trading eyeball glare with the mage, him hovering in midair with his arms crossed, me on the ground surrounded by hounds. The folk. Well, we don't know what they really look like. The one thing they can do better than any human is illusion. So the truth is, we don't know if what we see is their true forms, if they're shifters, or if it's all illusion. There's some differences among them: hair, skin, eye color, and definitely costume. But they all share certain things. For starters, they are beautiful. Even the wildest, most feral of them is gorgeous enough to make you gasp if you aren't ready for it. They all have pointed ears about as long as your forearm, and eyebrows like antennas, and thin, sort of pointy faces. They're usually tall, about 7 to 8 feet tall, with thin bodies to go with the faces. The ones I'd run up against were all feral, hair down past their knees, but all dreadlocks, braids, and straggles, with feathers and carved stone and bits of bone braided in, dressed in skins with the hair still on it, decorated with bones and feathers and whatever other odd bits take their fancy. They hadn't been mages. All their control of magic was at the level of instinct, babies compared to the masters. This one was different. With him floating there, his long, silvery lavender hair perfectly groomed and smooth as ice, ended a couple of feet just past the soles of his shoes. His hair was done in some sort of elaborate style with strings of sparkly beads behind his right ear. He had a silver headband stretched across his forehead with a lavender stone in it that matched his lavender eyes. I couldn't even begin to describe his costume. It was all of some soft, shiny, silvery lavender stuff with floaty sleeves and lots of layers, and every visible bit of it was covered in silver embroidery and more sparkly beads. The sphere-shaped wall around him glimmered like the surface of a soap bubble, but I had just seen that 6 Hellfire missiles wouldn't dent it, so I wasn't fooled by how fragile it looked. He and I stood there staring at each other for a while. My Aikido master had taught me that the one that makes the first move sacrifices his advantage by putting his energy out there. So I had learned patience. Finally he spoke, and his voice was just as beautiful as his face. "I see you, Hunter." There it was, the traditional opening of a battle, but not a duel. Good. That meant I could cheat. And I intended to. "I see you, magician," I replied. "What have you to do with the sheep behind you?" he asked in conversational tone. "I am the shepherd of these sheep," I responded, taking responsibility for the train and everyone on it. "Then the shepherd can spare a lamb, or 2, or more." Now, that surprised me. I hadn't expected him to try and bargain. I concentrated on my one white stone, however, and kept my face as smooth as the stone itself. "Not an option," I said flatly. "You must look elsewhere, magician." There were people that would sell their fellows to the folk. Where I came from, you earned a rope necklace for doing that, but there were. There are always people that aren't human, who think that the only thing in the world that matters is themselves. The kind of people that caused the disarray in the first place. And no, I didn't need the masters to tell me that. That's just plain sense. If you don't look after your fellow man, you're not human, and that's that. Slowly, he tilted his head to the side. I was not wearing a wall. Now, let me put you straight here. Remember how I said that magic costs? So where I was taught, I learned to do the most with the least, which is kind of how everyone on the mountain lives. Do the most with the least, everyone has enough, and there's something to spare in an emergency. So, yeah, I could have put up a wall to match his. But why? The hounds could do it too, and they were faster than me. If Baya felt something coming, he'd snap up his wall to deflect what was coming before it hit us. Then, I could invoke my better, stronger one, and meanwhile, I wouldn't be bleeding mana. And he wouldn't be breeding my strength from my wall. So, he was puzzled, because I wasn't doing this the way that the folk would, and maybe the way any other hunter he'd met had. And he was studying me, trying to decide if I was just stupid, or if I was a lot stronger than he could guess. And while he was studying me, let's just say I wasn't being idle. Most with the least, right? I had a tiny little bit of magic going, slowly grinding through his wall. So subtle, so inconspicuous, it was happening right under his nose, and he wasn't even copping to it. You have no shield, no armor, he said conversationally, and yet your mind is smooth. One white stone. One white stone. So they say, I shrugged. Of a courtesy, please unencumber the way, magician. I would take my sheep to their pasture. There, I asked you nicely. Go away. You could, he replied thoughtfully, tilting his head to the side, take them to mine. Say, what? Had he just... We have shepherds tending our flocks, he continued, confirming what I thought I'd heard. You could take Sizen of me, take me as your lord, and forsake the lords of the city. You would find a more pleasant life, I do assure you. Your sheep would be tended. They might even prefer their new life. Okay. This was new. I stalled for time. A little more, and my magic would have scoured my part of his wall, very thin indeed. The folk have no love for my kind, I retorted. Why would you offer such a thing? He laughed. It sounded like bells. You interest me, hunter. You are not a sheep. You are more clever and patient than a wolf. You are braver than a lion. You are a new thing. You might prove to be a weapon in my hand. Or something else. He leaned down, his eyes glittering at me. You are partly incorrect. Not all of my kind consider yours to be the enemy. And my kind do not find yours uncomely. He straightened. Properly groomed and garbed, of course. He added with arrogance that was natural to someone who was sure of his own superiority. And your hounds, they interest me too. Baya's back vibrated under my hand as he growled. They are new to me as well, he continued. What are they? On a platter. Oh, I said, Zapotec. and I flung myself to the ground, and the hounds flung themselves on top of me as I flung up a wall of my own around us. And a hell of ordnance blasted into his wall at point-blank range. I didn't see it, of course. I was buried under the hounds, but I certainly heard it. And I felt the concussive force and some of the heat, and I made myself as small as possible and thought of my one white stone. The hounds were fine, given that they had their walls and mine too, and reverted to their doggy forms when we walked back to the first of the passenger cars and got back on the train the easy way. I was shaken, and what I wanted was to lie down and not think. But I knew I needed to debrief with the military types. If this had been the mountain, I would have to report first to the masters while everything was fresh in my mind, and the military were the citizen equivalent. But the masters warned me that pretty much everything out in the citizens' world had a zillion spy eyes on it. So I was pretty sure that the whole thing had been broadcast back into the cars once our victory was assured. The citizens in the cars would have wanted to know what was going on, and most of them were of a high enough status to demand and get information. And if we failed, well, they'd have a record of what not to do, right? I was right about the broadcast, and the stewards were having to hold people back from the door. I figured the citizens needed to make a fuss over something, so I left the hounds to be fussed over and went back into the armed car. Now, like I said, I wasn't nearly as cool as I looked, way down deep inside, but for now, I would be all right. Once I'm in hunter mode, I'm kind of in a zen state where nothing much bothers me. I figured I couldn't afford to let hunter mode slip right now. I was going to pay for that later, but that would be then if this was now. I wasn't sure what I'd find up on the gun deck, but I was actually kind of pleased to find it full of sober faces rather than whooping and hollering as the train shuddered into motion and began to pick up speed again. Did we? The officer began. I shook my head. No telling. Can you show me the playback on crawl time? I was busy kissing dirt at the time he made the big bada boom. The playback showed me pretty much what I expected on slow-mo. The folk mage had just enough time to realize what was going on and poof out before the barrage got through his wall. I wouldn't be able to play that trick on him again, and possibly not on any other of the folk, but then I'd expected it was a one-off. Like I said, I'd never heard of one of the folk talking to a hunter sensibly, nor of any of the folk offering. What had he offered? A job? An alliance? To be his pet? Then again, if any hunter had taken up such an offer, no one would ever hear about it. He'd just vanish, presumed dead. I dragged my thoughts back to here and now. There, I said, pointing to the telltale flash of light inside the wall that wasn't quite obscured by the stuff blowing the wall to bits. The officer said something rude. He bamfed. I nodded. Yes, but getting him wasn't the point or our job. The point was to get him gone, and our job was to get these people safe inside the city. Well, they didn't like it. That didn't surprise me. My masters had explained to me in detail between the way a soldier thought, the way a citizen thought, and the way a hunter thought. Our people, of course, were not like citizens or soldiers, much more like hunters in mindset. So I had to have all that taught me. Short form. Soldiers like victories. And anything that's not a victory is a defeat. unless someone manages to spin it as a victory, which the officer would as soon as I left, because that was his job. My guess is they won't bother this train, and maybe will think twice and 3 times before they tackle any train for a while, I said, to give him something to work on. Then I smiled on the surface, because I really needed to go be truly by myself or with Baya for a bit. You men were ace. All I was the bait and the distraction and the mouse that ate into his wall. No way I could have taken him. Best I could do was make a hole for you to shoot through. Which of course wasn't true, but it fed more into their mind share. They looked a lot more cheerful. I could almost see the thoughts spinning up behind the officer's eyes. Then I left. The first call was all private compartments, because if the train had to drop cars and put on emergency speed, guess who'd get saved? The friendly steward surprised me by waiting at the door of the car. There's a lot of people that want to thank you, he began, then gave me this odd little smile. But I wondered if you wanted to let them just now. You look like you could use a short break. I didn't break down in front of him, but wow, he must have been borderline Simon. Actually, I began, and before I could say anything more, he'd whipped open the door of the first compartment and kind of gently shoved me in. It was small, but there was a tiny fresher in there, and a bed, a real bed, turned down and waiting, and some snacks and drinks. Push that button when you're ready to come out and mingle, he said. I'll come get you. Then he shut the door, and I was finally alone. Not for long, though. Baya ghosted in through the closed door. Yes, they can do that when they're on this side. And was all over me. And that was when I cried, and shook, and cried some more. All of the ways that things could have gone bad went through my mind in vivid detail. I could have died, and everyone in the train could have died. Or the mage could have made me his prisoner and made me watch while everyone died. Or he could have used me to get at my masters at the mountain. Or lots of things. Lots of things. It took me a while to calm down, let's just say. Then I washed my face, put a cold cloth on my eyes till they stopped looking so red, ate something that looked like a tiny artwork made of food, drank a lot of water, and went out to get fussed. I don't like fuss. I don't like it when it's people I know, and I like it less when it's people I don't. But the masters and uncle both made it very clear to me that part of my job now was to accept the fuss and take it as a gift, even when it made me feel a little sick inside. The fellow I was coming to think of as my steward was watching at the end of the car and stopped me before I went on. The company would like it if you could do a walkthrough on all the passenger cars, he said, which told me someone had already relayed what had happened upline and orders had come downline. This wasn't the company would like it. This was a nicely phrased order. I didn't know why. Maybe I could figure it out later. Right, I can do that, I said. I could hold off more hysterics, and then have the usual post-hunt collapse for a while. That was something else I'd been drilled in, because on the mountain, we like a story, and the stories a hunter that makes it home tell are always going to have a happy ending by definition. Then let's get to it, shall we? He nodded and opened the door for me. People crowded around as best they could in the narrow car. I smiled bravely and nodded and said soothing things. The hounds eeled their way through the legs into my side, packing around me to give me more space. I made sure to say something to everyone, but the first person that thrust a piece of paper and pen in my hand and asked for my autograph kind of threw me. For a minute, I didn't know what she wanted. Autograph just wasn't a word we used up on the mountain very often. But it happened over and over, not just in the first car, but in all of them. So I scrawled my name and added a harmless version of my mandala with a lot of the lines left out, and they seemed to like that. It was draining. I'm not used to spending that much time with people after a hunt. Neither are the hounds. They slipped away from me one by one, leaving only Baya. And it wasn't just working down the train. I kind of had to go through a shortened version of it on the way back up. When I got to my car, though, my steward was waiting. The company has authorized you to have that first compartment, he said, the one I opened for you. They want you to have plenty of rest. I could have kissed him. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do anything, much less sleep, with people in my car staring at me and pretending not to stare. I would really like that, I said with feeling. Thank you, and thank you for opening it in the first place. Let's see. Well, we just hit 9, so I think we'll call it right there. That sound like something you guys like?
Yes.
Publisher.
Oh, that's the hard part. 2015. Joyo Charmant.
What are you reading from?
Hunter. It's a YA series I just sold to Disney Hyperion.
Excellent.
Yeah, Disney. Oh my God. It's not just that they are giving, normally with a young adult book, you don't get the same money that you get for an adult book. Not only are they offering me the same as my adult books, they're offering me this publicity package that made my eyes bulge out. It's unbelievable. So.
Congratulations.
But hey, it's the mouse.
Rat.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've had the
Congratulations to
same,
them too.
I've had the same agent working for me since my third book.
Okay.
You know, I think Harry Potter probably opened the door for young adult books.
Young adult is the one steadily increasing market share. Adult books have kind of flattened out. E-books are starting to take off a lot, but DAW, my major publisher, has been really stupid about e-books, and they're really, really slow at getting them out. So, Hyperion, however, is very smart about these things. And thank you for coming to the reading.
Thank
And
you.
thank you very much for doing the interpretation. Did I go slow enough? You were fine. All right, yeah.
Kidding, she was the most entertaining part.
She was awesome.
I was trying to not do my usual speed.
That's okay, I was caught up. Sometimes it's hard whenever people read from something, but you're fine.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. All right, thank you guys very much. Thank you. And